estate plan? Call 602-496-8888.
Coming up next on Arizona PBS, Life and World.
PBS Online. Share, tweet, watch.
Coming soon to Arizona PBS.
Scrunched up arms, folded legs, lovely destitute eyes.
I have only a note taken in reading or fever. I can't tell from my handwriting which.
Suntanners in Central Park turning over like rotisserie chickens sizzling on a spit.
Stay a while, Mrs. Caldera says, and never have you felt so valuable.
When you want to be more informed, Arizona PBS delivers news and analysis with multiple perspectives, thanks to financial support from you and
Hospice of the Valley, medical, social, and spiritual care for patients nearing end of life, and support for their families. A not-for-profit community hospice, HOV.org.
Support comes from Arizona Business Bank, a CoBiz financial company, providing personal service and experienced bankers for your business and personal banking needs. More online at azbizbank.com.
From the Cronkite Studios in downtown Phoenix, this is Cronkite News.
New details from Washington today. There could be troops at the border as soon as tonight. We have team coverage from the border to our Washington bureau.
Plus, new safety measures to protect your kids in case of a school shooting. How one Valley company is getting into the business of bullet-resistant inserts for backpacks.
Plus, teachers, parents, and students joined forces today for a walk-in to continue the educators' fight for higher pay.
Cronkite News starts now.
Good evening and welcome to Cronkite News on Arizona PBS. I'm Adriana de Alba.
And I'm Troy Lynch. Thank you for joining us. The Department of Homeland Security Secretary Christian Nielsen said today that President Donald Trump will be signing an order to deploy National Guard troops to the border immediately. Nielsen did not say specifically how many troops will be needed, but noted she will be speaking with the governors of the 4 border states to determine their needs. She said the troops could arrive at the border as early as tonight. Austin Bundy begins our team coverage in Washington.
While there are not many details available this evening, the White House has committed to moving forward as quickly as possible. Secretary of Homeland Security Kirstjen Nielsen said in a briefing this afternoon that state governors will get all the help they will need.
The governors retain control of the National Guard within their region, so I'm not going to get ahead of them. The ones that I have spoken to understand our urgency, our request. The National Guard understands the urgency and the request, so we will do it as expeditiously as possible.
The president's decision also drew support this afternoon from Texas Governor Greg Abbott, who said in a press release, quote, "Today's action by the Trump administration reinforces Texas's long-standing commitment to secure our southern border and uphold the rule of law. The military cannot physically intervene with illegal immigrant apprehensions, but can act in a supporting role. It could also use Pentagon funds to build parts of the border wall, something President Trump has called for repeatedly."
There are some lands that the Department of Defense owns that right on the border that are actually areas where we see illicit activity. As part of what DoD does every day in terms of force protection, we're looking into options for the military to build wall on military installations on the border.
This isn't the first time a president has sent the National Guard to the border. President George W. Bush sent 6,000 National Guardsmen to the southwest border in 2006, and President Barack Obama sent 1,200 troops in 2010. Those operations cost a total of more than $1.3 billion, according to reports from the Government Accountability Office. While Governor Ducey welcomes the move, other state officials have been mixed. Border sheriffs told us yesterday that they're waiting for the details, while reaction from the state's congressional delegation ranged from perfect sense to part of the president's reign of terror. Live in Washington, Austin Bundy, Cronkite News.
Our Cronkite News Borderlands team headed south today to hear from border residents about today's announcements. Reporter Lillian Donahue continues our team coverage.
I'm in the Arizona town of Sierra Vista, just miles north from the Arizona-Mexico border. right where President Donald Trump says that he wants to deploy military out to that area to help fortify it until he can build a wall. Ranchers in the area say that they're all for it.
I'm 100% behind him.
Why?
It's time that we stop what is coming across our southern border. We've put up with it for 30 years. Nobody has been serious. It's all about votes. It's all about the continuation of the votes for the Democrats, and then the American people want cheap tomatoes. And this immigration issue is ruining our country.
Depend on Cronkite News for full coverage on the border debate in the days ahead.
Instead of dropping their children off at school this morning, some parents joined teachers in walking into Valley schools. Reporter Gabriella Becerra takes us to an elementary school in Glendale that participated.
Today, we are going to walk in together.
Educators, parents, and legislators gathered by the flagpole in front of Bicentennial South School before walking in together.
We are walking in to demand better for our students because our students are the future.
Teacher Matt Schock says he is a part of the Red for Ed movement because he wants to see Arizona provide more funding to education.
We are Red for Ed because we want a true commitment and investment in the future of Arizona.
Teachers painted their car windows, students held up posters, and parents had the opportunity to speak with their child's educators about this movement. Teacher Megan McCabe says she wants the community to understand what this movement really means.
It's not, do teachers want pay raises? That is not the point. The point is, how can we get funding back into our schools? How can we get the support that we need for our schools?
Representative Richard Andrade says lawmakers on both sides need to provide that support.
Done nothing but cut funding to our schools, to public education, and we're seeing the impact of it.
Andrade says voters need to elect leaders who are going to give schools funding this November.
People that really support public education need to start asking candidates, do you really support public education, or are you just a mouthpiece?
The dozens that participated today at Bicentennial South showed the teachers and staff there they support them. In Glendale, Gabriella Becerra, Cronkite News.
Next Wednesday, April 11th, Red for Ed walk-ins will be happening at schools statewide. The movement is asking for parents with children in elementary, middle, and high school to come together.
Teachers in the Scottsdale Unified School District will receive a pay increase beginning next fall. The school district's governing board voted in favor of the measure last night. The 3.5% raise includes a 0.5% raise to the base pay for all teachers, 2% as a step up to the salary schedule, which means the most experienced teachers won't get that hike, as well as 1% to the Prop 123 stipend, and will only apply to those paid through School Fund 1000.
Teachers often send progress reports home with their students to let parents know where their child stands. Today, teachers are teaming up with students and parents to give a progress report to the governor. Reporter Kate Gardner went to the state capitol to find out what the governor's progress report said.
I'm here because we are delivering report cards to the legislators and the governor to let them know that we are very unhappy with their performance this session, and particularly we're unhappy that they are trying to remove money from taxpayer money from public schools and direct it to private schools.
Teachers, parents, and students filled out these reports last week at the Day of Action Teach-In. The reports focus on topics like the representative's ability to listen to others, work as a team, and understand basic math.
Those who filled out their progress report for the governor or for their Arizona representative could take it, fold it up, and drop it in this box, where it would be taken later to the governor's office.
Save Our Schools Arizona wants to see improvement in the state's education, but focuses on the need for funding public schools.
When Arizona's public school system is having a funding crisis, when our teachers are fleeing the state, when voters are begging to be heard, there is no expansion of private school vouchers that is acceptable.
Most of the progress reports are addressed to Governor Doug Ducey. While many of the reports showed what lawmakers needed to improve, they also showed support for those who are fighting for public education.
I filled out for my senator, Sean Bowie, who has been extremely supportive of public education.
These reports are an attempt to encourage state officials to listen to voters and discuss the issues surrounding AZ schools. but they also serve another purpose. Pennish Thacker said they're also an attempt to remind lawmakers who continue to ignore voters that we're watching to see if they make the grade come November. In Phoenix, Cade Garner, Cronkite News.
Members from Save Our Schools Arizona took the progress reports and delivered them to both the legislature and the governor. The group is opposed to Proposition 305, but is working to make sure voters will be able to have a say on the issue this upcoming November.
Recent events on school campuses have altered the way some parents now do their school shopping. Instead of pens and pencils, parents are thinking about safety. Reporter Nicole Gutierrez tells us why some parents in the Valley are buying bullet-resistant inserts for their kids' backpack.
Doesn't take up any room, but it's cheap insurance in case something happens.
Matt McDonald is a concerned father when it comes to sending his kids to school.
I'm not there to stand over them all day long and protect them.
The recent events in Florida, our sales have actually, for certain panels, been increased by as much as 1,000%. And in one particular panel, our sales went up about 1,500%.
Back in January of this year, McDonald bought bullet-resistant inserts for his children's backpacks at a gun show and says the armors are an investment.
Been moving from bag to bag or to backpack to backpack. We already have one backpack that the kid's broken this year. So the next backpack, it'll just go into the next one, and we'll have them forever.
People have gone with this, especially for some of the smaller children, but most of the people are either okay with the weight or they just go with the pistol protection. And so it's just really all up to the consumer, what they're willing to pay and what they want protection from.
Cordova says that although these body armors may serve as an extra layer of protection, it doesn't mean they're bulletproof. They're bullet resistant.
Resistant is saying that this object, this armor that we produce, is going to perform in a way that we have stated, that it has a certain threat level protection, and it is not proof because at some point that threshold will be broken and it will fail, regrettably.
McDonald says that although the inserts his children have aren't rifle-proof, they are handgun resistant, which grants him some peace.
No parent wants to send their kids to school and have what happen. It's just a little layer of protection that may or may not work, but having it in there is a lot, increases the odds compared to not having something.
In Moon Valley, Nicole Gutierrez, Cronkite News.
Cordova from AR 500 Armor says they've been having more specials on the bullet-resistant inserts, so this protection can be more attainable. The weight of the inserts ranges from less than a pound to 9 pounds.
2 Arizona senators are being honored at the state's largest attraction.
Coming up on Cronkite News, we go to the Grand Canyon for the new unveiling of a plaque.
And how Arizona State University is using art to help combat sexual assault and harassment.
I'm Judy Woodruff, anchor and managing editor of the PBS NewsHour. The journalists of tomorrow face a fast-changing media landscape, but quality news remains vitally important to our communities, our country, and our world. At ASU's Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communication, students learn solid, reliable reporting, holding the powerful accountable, and rebuilding the public's trust. The Cronkite School and Arizona PBS, preparing the next generation for a stronger future of journalism.
As journalists at Cronkite News, we report on stories that matter to you by focusing on the local impact. We dig deeper and work tirelessly to keep you informed.
Live in Wickerburg.
Live in Los Angeles.
In Cleveland. In Washington. In Louisville.
From Jerusalem.
Live in Philadelphia. From around the world to right here in Phoenix.
At Cronkite News, we report the facts and stick to the truth.
Millions of people die every year from drinking dirty water. I would never have felt I had the ability to do something without ASU pushing me. We built filtration systems out of local materials with the people to see those kids drink clean water for the first time. It's the most rewarding feeling that you can ever have. I went to ASU because I wanted to change the world. The thing I never would have expected is how the world would have changed me.
2 Arizona lawmakers, including Senator John McCain, are being honored at the Grand Canyon for their efforts to help preserve the park. Cronkite News reporter Tyler Fingert was there for the ceremony.
The park is one of the natural wonders of the world, and today 2 people who have helped to preserve and protect the park were honored here. The Grand Canyon Association and the National Park Service unveiled a rendering of a tribute plaque for Senator John McCain and the late Representative Morris Udall. They pointed to their shared love for the canyon and the different policies they've helped to put into place to protect the park, like promoting safety, helping to preserve the Colorado River, which runs right through the canyon, and helping to protect the animals that live here. Today's unveiling is meant to honor their work and make sure those who visit the park know how they've helped to make sure it's preserved. John McCain wasn't here, but his wife Cindy was, along with members of the Udall family. Cindy says it was important for her to be here today.
To dedicate something like this to both Mo and to my husband is it's wonderful. I mean, it really is. It's heartwarming and it's such an honor, and I'm just glad I could represent him today.
The recognition of these 2 great men are receiving today is well deserved. They are true patriots and examples for us all.
At this point, they have no timeline on when they will put the plaque out, but they say it will be here along the South Rim. At the Grand Canyon tonight, Tyler Finger, Cronkite News.
Sexual violence is one of the largest issues facing universities nationwide. Just last month, an alleged sexual assault at a fraternity party led to a $2.5 million lawsuit filed against the University of Arizona. Cronkite News reporter Madison Stark is live in the Media Center with more about ASU's innovative efforts to put an end to sexual assault. Madison?
In 2014, a report released by the Sexual Violence Prevention Task Force noted that cultural change through art needed to be made in order to prevent sexual violence. The Herberger Design Institute at ASU heard this call and jumped to action. The Counteract Convening is an event bringing together the minds of students, professors, artists, and experts to help find creative solutions to end sexual violence through art.
The most innovative school in the nation wants to be innovative in this area as well. And that innovation comes from seeing the power of artists and artistic processes as assets to give us new tools to deal with this very complex and challenging topic.
Nick Selesky is the co-creative director for the Counteract Initiative and says the arts are a great way to bring people together over this issue.
They offer things like pleasure to difficult conversations, helping us stay in them for longer periods of time because they offer us access to diverse perspectives and stories.
The Counteract Convening also launched a Grant Seeds program funding creative actions against sexual violence. This is all part of the event's main goal in creating 880 creative acts to combat the 880 acts of sexual violence experienced in the U.S. every day. DeJuan Porter is an ASU freshman who hopes to make a creative difference by utilizing his singing and songwriting background.
Like all of us kind of came together on one music project talking about like your voice matters, like let your voice shine kind of thing, come through and let yourself be heard type of thing. Like we could definitely like come up with some very powerful meaning lyrics but also have like amazing music to go with it.
Artistic actions and creative designs of all forms are encouraged in this effort to prevent sexual violence. Funding up to $1,200 is available for these preventative expressions. In the Media Center, Madison Stark, Cronkite News.
The Phoenix Suns made history last night by hosting the team's first Pride Night.
Coming up on Cronkite News, why celebrating diversity and inclusion is so important to these basketball stars.
And how many days in a row will we see 90-degree highs like today? I'll tell you your full forecast coming up.
I'm Ted Simons, host and managing editor of Arizona Horizon. Join us each weekday at 5:30 and 10 as we bring you the top newsmakers who impact the state. We cover the stories in depth that shape and affect our local communities, and we take the time to ensure that all voices are equally heard. For more than 30 years, Arizona Horizon has been your voice and your source for what matters most, right here on Arizona PBS.
Fridays, it's at Cronkite News, your social sharing connection where you choose the news. Facebook likes and shares, tweets, retweets, and favorites. YouTube views and subscriptions. We're watching you watch us. From our digital home at cronkitenews.azpbs.org to your television, web browser, or mobile device. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Then join us for at Cronkite News, our weekly refresh, each Friday at 5 on Arizona PBS.
By the year 2050, there will be more plastic in the ocean than fish. Before Professor Halden, I had an insane amount of passion, but I almost felt helpless because I didn't know how to use it. Professor Halden gave me a chance to make a difference. being at a place like ASU allows you to take these big leaps. Ultimately, the biggest problems in the world cannot be solved alone.
The Phoenix Suns became the third team in the NBA to host a Pride Night. The Suns celebrated diversity and inclusion last night, and Cronkite News sports reporter Chaz Frazier was there.
In 2014, Jason Collins became the NBA's first openly gay active player.
I reached a point in my private life where I told my family and my close friends, everyone who means the most to me in the world, and I had their love and support. So I said, well, why not tell the rest of the world?
Collins was at Talking Stick Resort Arena Tuesday night for the Phoenix Suns' first ever Pride Night. According to a 2015 Gallup report, 4.1% of adults in Greater Phoenix identify as LGBT, a higher percentage than both New York and Chicago. Washington-based communications firm YTech Communications estimated the community's buying power across the United States at nearly $1 trillion in 2016.
They're dual-income families, and it's folks that have money to spend, and it's folks that are always looking for something to do, just like most Arizonans. And so I think sports, first and foremost, is we're in the entertainment industry.
While Collins placed the emphasis on how far the NBA has come with diversity, fans say events like Pride Night is the first step to making the NBA a more inclusive community.
There's so many different people in the NBA that may be afraid to come out, and I think this is a great way for them to feel maybe some kind of acceptance, or maybe feel comfortable to make a step forwards or just be proud.
Collins now works as an ambassador for NBA Cares, working to promote diversity across the league. In Phoenix, Chaz Frazier, Cronkite News.
The Suns say this was the first step to creating a more diverse community in the NBA. The organization plans to host more Pride Nights in the future.
It's really beginning to feel like summer out there.
Yeah, are these cool temperatures ever going to come back?
Fortunately, we're going to be flirting with 90 degrees for the next few days. Let's take a look right now at your temperatures. Upper 80s here in the valley, 87 here in Phoenix, 87 down in Casa Grande. If you go up north, a little bit cooler, 61 in Flagstaff, 72 up in Page. Tonight here in Phoenix, going to go down to a low 64. We'll hit it in the overnight hours tomorrow morning. And then again, it will warm up into the 90s. We expect full sunshine tomorrow, 93 degrees for your high. And take a look with me. 93 the high tomorrow, 91 Thursday, 94 on Saturday, but Saturday night there is a 10% chance of rain. But then 92 Sunday, 95 Monday and Tuesday, 91 a week from today. In the Cronkite Weather Center, I'm Matt Kling.
A new tattoo trend is combining technology and art.
Coming up on Cronkite News, how a tattoo artist is using an app to permanently ink a sound to your skin.
Officially from 36, and he hooks it in. Arizona State wins. Keeping one deep, and it is caught. Jalen Strong. Do you believe
Cronkite News, weeknights at 5 on Arizona PBS.
Tattoos have been a form of expression for generations, tracing their roots back thousands of years. But recently, they've gotten even more personal. Reporter Tim Johns was in Glendale to see how technology is helping to bring tattoos to a whole new level.
Shane Halleck has been giving people traditional tattoos for years, but for the past few months, he's been doing something very different.
Happy birthday, girl.
They're called sound wave tattoos, a concept developed by a California company called Skin Motion, which developed an app that can read and broadcast recordings from tattooed sound waves. Halleck got certified through the company in January and has been doing sound waves ever since. But one of his clients was especially important to him.
I went and I tried it, and I was like late for work because I kept playing it over and over and over again that morning.
His wife, Caitlin's sound wave, is a voicemail that her late mother left her on her birthday.
It means so much more to me because it's her voice and I can hear it and it's on my skin.
And for Shane, being able to give his wife such a special gift is something that he'll always cherish.
It means a lot to me to be able to tattoo my wife, especially giving her the sound wave of my mother-in-law's voice that passed away, because she's very near and dear to us and has always been there with us through thick and thin.
A gift.
Happy birthday, girl.
That will last a lifetime. In Glendale, Tim Johns, Cronkite News.
Skin Motion's service costs $40 for the initial setup, plus a $10 annual fee.
Cronkite News is proud to be the news division of Arizona PBS. Here's what's coming up on Arizona Horizon and PBS NewsHour.
On the next Arizona Horizon, the governor and Republican legislative leaders could be at odds over the idea of arming school personnel to increase school safety, and the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King 50 years later.
I'm Judy Woodruff. On the next NewsHour, we start our series 50 years later, looking at the nation 50 years after the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. That's Wednesday on the PBS NewsHour.
That's it for Cronkite News tonight. Thank you so much for joining us.
For top Arizona stories anytime, go to cronkitenews.azpbs.org.
Support for Arizona PBS comes from viewers like you and from...
At Mutual of Omaha, we listen only to our customers, not to Wall Street, not to outside shareholders. We listen to you. For over 100 years, it's how we've built honest, compassionate, and lasting relationships. And so, that's how we begin, by listening. To see how we can recommend the insurance that makes sense for you, 800-88-LISTEN or mutualofomaha.com.
This is the story of how butterflies became one of the great wonders of the world. Masters of deception and seduction, they're indispensable to much of life on Earth. How did these delicate but enduring heroes come to be?
Tonight at 7 on Arizona PBS.
Next time on Black America, the 80s bring big changes, but there's also a new scourge.
Crack. There's an entire economy around criminalizing black men.
And video cameras put our racial divide in focus. Next time on Black America Since MLK.
Tonight at 8 on Arizona PBS. Explore new ideas and new worlds here on Arizona PBS, a community service of Arizona State University.
Programs on Arizona PBS are funded in part by a gift from the Faye and Alan Kendall Charitable Trust. For more information on how to include Arizona PBS in your estate plan, call 602-496-8888.
Coming up next on Arizona PBS, Life and World.
PBS Online. Share, tweet, watch.
Coming soon to Arizona PBS.
Once upon a time, an artist invented new ways to amaze and inspire us and created worlds of pure imagination.
No one is untouched by Walt Disney.
But behind the fantasy was a man driven by ambition.
He could come down on you like a ton of bricks.
With unprecedented access to the Disney archives, meet Walt Disney on American Experience.
Friday night at 8 on Arizona PBS. Support for Arizona PBS comes from viewers like you and from
Desert Caballeros Western Museum presents its 13th annual Cowgirl Up, Art from the Other Half of the West. Exhibition March 23rd through May 13th with artwork by women artists from across the nation. Details at westernmuseum.org. Arizona Highways Magazine is for people who strive to enjoy and are inspired by Arizona's unique outdoor experience, rich history, and diverse culture. Subscription information at arizonahighways.com/PBS.
Coming up next on Arizona Horizon, state lawmakers talk about teacher pay in our weekly legislative update. Also today marks 50 years since Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated, and how Tempe is attracting high-tech jobs to the city and the region. Those stories and more next on Arizona Horizon.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of Arizona PBS, members of your PBS station. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome to Arizona Horizon. I'm Ted Simons. Teachers throughout the Phoenix area protested again today, calling for higher salaries and more school funding. Teachers dressed in red gathered outside schools before the first bell in demonstrations that they describe as walk-ins.
We're here for our kids. We're here for our jobs. We are here to help our students be successful. And so we're not going to walk out on them. We're going to walk in and show people that we're here for them.
The teachers are leaving the teaching profession altogether, which is just a heartbreak, because they really do have their heart in their children and teaching, but they're not able to sustain a livable wage by teaching. And we need to do better as a state to make sure that they can live.
We need to increase their pay, give them a raise, so that way they don't have to struggle anymore.
Last week, thousands of Arizona teachers protested at the state capitol, calling for a 20% pay increase and a return of state education spending to pre-recession levels. Those teacher demands and the threat of a strike lead off our weekly legislative update. Last week we heard from the Republicans. Tonight it's the Democrats' turn. We welcome Senate Minority Whip Martin Quesada and House Assistant Minority Leader Randy Freeze. Good to have you both here. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
All right, these teachers, we heard the teachers, they presented their demands last week. 20% pay increase, that would equate to maybe like $8,500 on average per teacher in the state. I know that you support those numbers. How do you pay for those numbers?
There's a number of ways that we can pay for those numbers, and I think it's important to recognize that setting this 20% request sounds unreasonable only because we've been conditioned by many, many years of Republican leadership into believing that the small incremental increases that they've given over the years are meaningful when they really aren't. So this is really a reset of the community's values and the community's expectations of what we should and could be doing.
But how, again, how do you pay for it?
So there's a number of ways to pay for it. One, we got to talk about revenue. We got to talk about putting taxes on the table, whether it's income tax on high income earners. Arizona has one of the lowest rates of high income earners taxes in the nation right now. There's only 4 other states that have a lower income tax rate. rate for high-income earners. That's one option. Closing tax loopholes is another option. There's a number of things that could get us to this point if we have the political will to look at them.
How do we pay for this? If a 20% increase, I mean, some are suggesting this could be $600 some odd million. You get back to pre-recession levels, you're talking in the billions here. How do we get this done?
Ted, you have to remember that some of the neighboring states are already, at that level, and if we get our teachers a 20% raise, we're just catching up. How do we get there? As Senator Quesada said, there's a couple ways. Being stewards of our revenue, meaning we have to think about ways of increasing revenue and being responsible for with the revenue we already have. We can redirect revenue. The governor's results-based funding plan can be put into a fund for teacher raises. Take away all the tax credits we give to private schools. That's $160-some million. Put that towards teacher raises. TPT exemptions, so sales tax exemptions, $50 million just for if you buy your car from out of state, you don't pay tax. There's plenty of ways where we can put together a program that can sustain a teacher raise.
And yet I'm not hearing $680 million, and I'm certainly not hearing in the billions. I mean, you're talking raising revenue, you're talking raising taxes.
I think everything needs to be on the table. Raising taxes, taking away prior TPT exemptions and tax credits, and redistributing the revenue that we have. All of those mechanisms have to be on the table, and yes, it's incremental.
The talk of a teacher strike. We keep hearing about this. We've seen actions in Oklahoma, in West Virginia, in Kentucky. Are we going to see those kind of actions here in Arizona?
I think that's really at the hands of the Republican leadership in the legislature and the governor. It depends on if they've heard the teachers' outcries and if they're going to put together a responsible plan that will address their needs. I certainly hope that we don't have to have a teacher strike, but I think that it's a legitimate option and it's a legitimate possibility at this point because we haven't seen anything to this point that shows us that they've heard what they're asking for and are doing anything to take it seriously.
What do you take of all this talk of teacher strike?
We just have to remember our teachers are professionals. Our teachers hold the future of Arizona in their hands. Our children are the future of this state. We have to treat them as professionals and pay them accordingly. They're also asking for no new tax cuts and no new tax credits. That's part of the 20% raise and no new tax cuts and credits. We got to look at this budget. Remember, the governor said from day one there'll be tax cuts every year. We got to look and see what this plan is and if that is acceptable to them or not, or whether they base their decision to strike on the way the budget looks this year.
Would you support a teacher strike if they don't reach their demands or come close to their demands?
I would support whatever it takes to get the teachers what they deserve.
What about you? Would you support a strike?
In the state of Arizona, we've consistently only reacted when situations reach crisis levels. A teacher strike would put us in a crisis level where our kids are being unsupervised, and if that's what it takes to get our governor and our legislature to act, maybe that's what it takes.
Let's talk about the governor's school safety plan, this business of guns in schools and the whole 9 yards. It sounds as though the governor finally has come out with some ideas. Universal background checks, not in there. I know that for some Democrats, that's a non-starter. How about you?
Yeah, I think it's a non-starter. I mean, without the universal background checks, everything that's in the plan right now is really just window dressing, and it's not going to really address the real needs that we have out in the community to keep our kids safe.
You've been at the forefront of this issue. What do you make of the governor's plans?
The governor's plan is looks good, sounds good, does very little. It's politics over policy. It's politics over people. We have an opportunity here. I'm very disappointed that we couldn't work together to save lives. Background checks save lives. Data demonstrates. In states where there's a comprehensive system of background checks, there's fewer domestic violence deaths, there's fewer police officer deaths, there's fewer suicides. We have missed an opportunity.
The Speaker says he will try for bipartisan consensus. If he doesn't get it, he will go it alone with the Republican Party. Your response?
We have been at the table not only with the Speaker but with the governor and his staff. We told them exactly what it would take to bring us on board and what compromises we're willing to make. From what I'm hearing that from my colleagues across the aisle, from my Republican colleagues, that the NRA has been at the table as they have learned about this package. And any NRA-sanctioned gun safety plan is no gun safety plan.
I think the governor's office is projecting an image of this being a middle-of-the-road plan. Liberals on one side, universal background check, not going to get it. Conservatives on the other side, wanting to ease regulations even as they stand, not going to get it. Or arming teachers, arming janitors, arming school bus drivers, if you will. They're not going to get that either. this is a middle-of-the-road plan. Your response?
A middle-of-the-road plan requires letting go of your far left as well as your far right. And if he is passing this bill with only Republicans, he is not letting go of anyone on the right.
Yeah, but the far right, the Republican Party does have a plan out there, arming teachers, arming principals, arming janitors, school personnel. I think some would consider that being a far-right proposal.
You could consider that a far-right proposal, but I think the governor's really missing an opportunity here because by painting this as leaving out the far left, because universal background checks isn't a far-left issue. The overwhelming majority of Democrats, Republicans, and gun owners support universal background checks. So the governor has an opportunity to really be a leader and to win the support of a large number of voters right now. And I'm frankly surprised he's not taking advantage of it.
And I just want to reiterate, I mean, having the NRA at the table when the Republicans learn about this bill gives them the comfort that, oh, this must be sanctioned by them and I might be able to vote for this plan and not get on their bad side. And again, background checks are not a far-left issue. That's a very important point to emphasize.
All right, before we go, we got to talk about this. It sounds like National Guard troops could be at the border as early as tonight, maybe tomorrow. We'll find out. This has been done before. President Obama, President George W. Bush, both sent National Guard troops to the border. What do you think of President Trump's plan to do the same?
Well, whenever President Trump is putting out any plan that's talking about our border, you have to really question whether this is a political move or whether this is a common sense move. And I think the president has really displayed what his any past policies are in regards to our border. This isn't necessary, and it's just another stunt on his behalf.
What do you think of this issue?
I would exercise great caution in deploying armed resources to the border.
And that's it. What can the state do about it? What do you see as the state's responsibility?
Well, I mean, the border is a federal issue. I think that we need to lean toward the federal government and their guidance in solving this problem. Clearly, this has been a problem for a long time.
Are you hearing anything at the state capitol regarding this issue, or is it just stand and watch and see what happens?
As of right now, and this is still fairly new news, so there hasn't been a lot that we've heard about yet, but I'm assuming this will develop over the next couple of days.
All right. It's good to have you both here.
Thank
you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.